Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the arse of the subscription button as well. And remember to chokehold that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. By subscribing, you'll be the first to see all of our new spooky creepypasta stories. I would just like to say a very big thank you to all of the authors that I have worked with, and all the ones that I will work with in the future. So thank you all, my brothers and sisters. And now, let's just take a moment's silence for all the haters. That's enough. If you would like to support the channel and buy me a very much loved coffee, you can send your donations, big or small, to paypal.me/cryptidsroost. And why not hashtag cryptidsroost in your comments? So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. The Redhill Brothers, Part 8, Giving Thanks. This awesome series is written by BrothersRedhill, aka crypticwander, a wonderful author over on Reddit. And if you would like to read more of his works, a link to his Reddit profile will be below in the description. People think hauntings are ghosts or demons. There's some residual force that sticks behind to make trouble for the living that refuses to die. I stood there at Grandma's house for a long while, just looking at it. It was always so full of life and happy. Now it just stood empty and quiet. It was like when we first came up here after Uncle Bob died, I thought as I rubbed the nub where my arm used to be. The only difference now was Zach wasn't here with me, and Bob's ghost wouldn't be lurking around inside. All these memories screamed loudly inside my head, reminding me of what truly was no longer there. This is what true ghosts were, and the house that raised generations was now officially haunted. I pulled the collar up on my flannel shirt as a harsh wind forced its way through me. It was only November 24th, the day before Thanksgiving, but I could tell from the dead-looking trees and the constant frost that winter would be here before too long. I sighed and made my way into the house. I hit the light and looked around at the utterly silent first floor. Nothing was moving, not even Captain Bubbles downstairs. Zach must have been keeping up with his feedings. I threw some Hot Pockets into the microwave and sat down to roll a couple of joints. My missing arm had been a pretty big problem so far, but at the clinic I had doctors, nurses and even Zach and Serena to help me out. Now I could see the real impact of it being removed as I clumsily sprinkled a mess of weed into a paper and rolled it up like I was 10 years old again. It sure as hell wasn't pretty, but it would do. I went over to the living room after struggling to throw some logs into the fireplace. I clicked on the radio. Good old Motley Crue played back, and I sparked up my sad spliff and sat on the couch. Normally I'd love to have the place to myself, but I had enough isolation back at the doctor's, and the existential nothing that was there to greet me chewed on the back of my brain. I was restless and I needed some company, so I went to the kitchen and picked up the phone and gave the hippies next door a call. After 6 rings nobody picked up, so I huffed and put it back on the hook. "Looks like it's just you and me, buddy," I said to myself, and even that seemed to harshly break the silence. I went back to the couch and picked up an activity book before realizing I had no hand to hold the goddamn pen. "This is such bullshit! Why do I have to lose everything important to me?" I yelled, throwing the book across the room. The pen clacked noisily next to the couch. Parents are gone, my brother and girlfriend are off doing God knows what, and I can't even get hippies to hang out, or a goddamn ghost to haunt me. I don't even know what the point of living is anymore. I sighed again and slumped down onto the couch. I won't lie, I was heading to a dark place pretty quickly. I'm not one to hurt myself, but things were looking bleak, man. I lay against the couch, feeling the darker part of my brain wash over me when I heard the radio cut out. Great, there's that stupid station again.
Good evening, listener. You might want to watch your left foot before standing up.
What the hell? This was new. The radio station never talked to us directly before. I stood up to get a closer look, and my foot landed on the pen, causing me to slip, and planted my ass back on the couch.
Good. Now that I have your attention, I need to tell you something important, and I don't have a lot of time. You are important, Matthew. So important. I know what you're thinking, but don't do it. You are needed and loved by everybody around you, even if you can't see that now. Don't let your losses leave you weaker. You have great strength in you, and I promise you that you'll see that as time goes on. Get up and get back on your feet, young Redhill. You matter, and everyone will see that.
Then, just as suddenly as it came, it returned to something by Judas Priest. I was stunned by what I just heard. Did I just get a pep talk from a radio station that doesn't exist? I got up and smacked it a couple of times, just to be sure, and it played music like it usually did. I furrowed my brow and went back for my Hot Pockets. They were blown out like always, as Zach was always the master chef of microwave cuisine. I went back to the couch and wolfed them down anyway. After smoking another disabled joint, much like myself, I closed my eyes. I opened them, and the first thing I noticed was everything was dark. I couldn't remember turning out the light, but honestly, I was in a pretty good buzz earlier. It didn't seem to wear off completely either, as the room around me seemed to wobble. I looked to the dark kitchen, and to my surprise, an impish little figure with long hair stood there smiling at me. There was a small white glow that emanated off of her, and I could see her as clear as day. "Chris?" I asked, and her playful smile grew wider. It was like before, and I felt pure joy from seeing her. "What's going on? Why are you here?" I asked. I knew she couldn't or wouldn't answer me, but she looked to the back of the kitchen and back to me. Then her small, weightless feet walked towards the back door to the pool shed. I followed behind her, and the dark hall began to swallow me. I felt a great dread in the pit of my stomach, as usually these kind of experiences end poorly. My dreams have always been fucking insane, and this would most likely end up like the ghost of Pascal from Pet Sematary, with her looking all gross and swollen. But I continued on through the door. Even without the wind, the air around me was cold as steel as I walked down the makeshift steps and towards the back door of the shed. She looked back to make sure I followed, and moved on through the door. I opened it and was greeted by a warm sun. It felt amazing, and the only way I can describe the emotion was like that of complete peace. The more I looked, the more I began to recognize what I was seeing. My family, aunts, uncles, a very young Zach, and all my cousins were standing before me, clapping and cheering. It was my 8th birthday. I thought everyone had forgotten about me, as nobody even so much as wished me a happy birthday. Then my dad came in to tell me there was something outside I needed to see. They didn't forget about me. It was a surprise party, and I was so relieved that I began crying. I let the feeling wash over me, then remembered I was following a ghost. Up ahead she stood before a large stone that jutted out on the side of the shed. Before it was a large box, gift wrapped and tied with a bow that said "Happy Birthday, Matty" on a large tag that stuck out. I walked over and stood next to Chris, and she looked down, then up at me with that same joyful smile on it. I smiled back and pat the girl's head. It was cold, but I could feel her hair and almost hear her giggle. I bent down and undid the ribbon and opened the box. All I could see was darkness. Then the words, "I'm back in black, I hit the sack. I've been too long, I'm glad to be back," shot out at me. I jumped up and saw I was still on the couch. The radio was blaring AC/DC, and I looked around hoping to find my family. The house was still empty. Zach and Serena still hadn't come back yet. I looked at my phone and saw it was 9:15 in the morning. Where the hell were they? I wondered. The good feelings began to fade, and jealousy took their place. I knew deep down that neither of them would ever do that to me, but it was weird that they would be gone this long together. I went to the phone and dialed Melvin's number again, and this time he picked up. "Hello?" "Hey, Melvin, it's Matt. Happy Thanksgiving." "Hey, Matty. Happy Thanksgiving, man. So, what are you up to today?" "Not a whole lot, I'm afraid. Zach and Serena never made it back last night, so I don't really even know if we're doing Thanksgiving." "Oh, that's rough, man. Tell you what, me and Sheena are getting ready to head down to the old church down on Sawyer Street. They're having all this all-you-can-eat Thanksgiving Day feast, and me and Sheena are totally jonesing for some munchies, dude. You can tag along if you want." "Yeah, I'd love that. Honestly, I've been feeling a little down the last few days. Some company would be great." "Right on, brother. We'll puff a little magic dragon, fill our bellies, and just chill out the rest of the day." "Awesome. I'll be down in a few. All right." "You got it, dude. We won't leave without you." I hung up the phone and felt a million times better. I ran upstairs to change my shirt and decided on a simple grey tee, as everything else was a pain in the ass. After I felt like I looked at least presentable, I went out the front door and had a thought as I walked towards the trailer that sat about 100 feet to the right. Like I said, my dreams have always been crazy, but they also had a certain prophetic trait to them as well. And out of curiosity, I went over to the side of the shed. Just as I thought, there was something sitting on the end of the rock that jutted out. Moving closer, I saw something wrapped up in paper bags we stored under the sink that sat on top of a handwritten note.
"For the small one, don't be late with our rent. With love, the Duende."
I picked it up and unwrapped it. Now, normally I should be concerned when holding a hand, but this was clearly something they made for me. It wasn't perfect by any means. In fact, it looked like something from the Terminator, but with much less technology. Pushing it into my stump, though I was surprised to find that it was a perfect fit. And after strapping it around my bicep and shoulder, it was almost like having a real hand again. I flipped over the paper and saw a crude drawing that were meant to be instructions. Pull the lever, push the button above it, and something went boom. I nervously looked at the forearm part of the prosthetic and saw a small tab that pulled up. It clicked into place and there was a small button just above it. I was beginning to have second thoughts when I heard someone yell,
Just do it, you coward!
It was within earshot, but I didn't see the small man. I turned back to the button and pushed it, and there was a small vibration as some unseen apparatus activated within, and something shot out into the distance. After a few seconds, it was followed by a loud bang! Jesus Christ! Those little bastards built a launcher into it and stuffed it with M80s.
You're welcome,
Came another high-pitched, disembodied voice. I quickly slammed the tab back down and made my way over to the trailer. I was met with disappointment as I saw their decked-out unicorn van was already gone. I was ditched on Thanksgiving Day by hippies. Should have seen this coming. Well, to hell with them. I was up for doing something, and it was only like 20 minutes walk to town. I was bound and determined to get some food, so I made my way down the mountain hill towards Phillips. The town was abustle with activity as far as small towns go. People driving from one end of the city to the other, bringing all manner of food to their relatives. Twice I almost got hit, one with the comment of, "Get the hell out of the road!" and finally made it to Sawyer Street. There were two churches side by side, and outside of the first one I saw a familiar van. It didn't have the trademark unicorn on the side, just a bland purple. They must have gotten a paint job recently. I walked in and the smell of every church in America came over me. Not necessarily a bad smell, but you know the one. I was greeted by the pastor, who shook my hand, and all the others that walked in. I could smell the food that was being cooked. It was delicious. I made my way over to the kitchen and was surprised I didn't see Melvin or Sheena anywhere, so I took a seat next to the wall and took in my surrounding. It was packed with mostly elderly people, a couple families that were probably on the hurting side of the wallet peppered the tables, and a few homeless, I would guess. After all my encounters with him, I was a little gun shy. The kitchen had a couple of older women that would fit into about any lunchroom cafeteria. They busily moved pans and food back and forth as people began to rise and form a line. At the front was a nun that was serving the row of plates that went by. I knew her from somewhere, but I couldn't quite place it. I've seen a lot of people since moving up here though, so I didn't pay it any mind. On the wall next to me was a corkboard full of ads, phone numbers, and a couple posters of a boy about the age of 16 or so. It was the preacher's son. Missing, Jonathan Carter, age 15. Last seen, November 20th, 2021. Any information, please call the Phillips Police Department or his father, Reverend Mason Carter. Let's get him back home. Melvin and Sheena had better things to do, it would seem, so I wasn't going to wait around any longer. Most of the people in the room had already started eating, so I made my way up to the back of the line and grabbed a plate. There was a good number of people ahead of me, including Reverend Morris. Up close, the food smelled even better, and my mouth began watering as I saw the red meat being set on the plates ahead. Must be ham, I thought, and the priest bowed to the food-serving nun. "Oh, Reverend, I do hope you enjoy it. I want to see you eat every bite," she said, staring deeply into his eyes. "Yes, Sister Agatha, I thank you for preparing this meal today, and may God bless you." For a moment, I thought I saw her recoil, upon hearing that. What's more, the colour of her eyes seemed to expand horizontally, like she was wearing contacts and they became unfocused or something. As she loaded his plate with potatoes, I looked down at the red meat and suddenly lost my appetite. Something wasn't right here, and for some stupid reason, I would have to be the one to find out what. As I approached the serving station, the familiar-looking face looked upon me and smiled. "Matt Redhill, I'm so glad you could join us today. I have been slaving all morning making this feast, and I'm glad you could make it." She lifted the tongs to grab a helping of whatever she was serving, and I put my hand up. "Sorry, sister, I just remembered I have an appointment today. I'm going to have to take a rain check." "Nonsense! You work so hard up on that hill, you deserve an extra helping," she said, placing a couple of bone-in chunks onto my plate. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just because of what I suspected the meat to be, but because it still smelled so delicious. Thanks. God be with you," I replied, and saw that same stinging reaction in conjunction with the eyes turning into slits. "Happy Thanksgiving," she replied, and I walked back to my seat in the back. I sat down looking at the meat. I was pretty sure it was human, not that I could prove it. Then it hit me. I knew where I remembered her from. It was at the celebration back in the beginning of summer. She was the old woman that was selling pies made with human remains. I got up and ran to the bathroom. My body did its best to retch up the scent of cooked human from my nose, and then I stood back up. She definitely wasn't human. I didn't know what, but I had to find out. I peeked out the bathroom door and saw everyone had been served and was eating. I couldn't see Agatha, but the Reverend was busy devouring someone. One less person I had to worry about. Not that he probably had anything to do with it. I walked out as nonchalantly as possible, and when it seemed like no one was looking, I ducked through a door in the back. A hall with all sorts of rooms. Great. One by one, I looked through them and saw nothing of interest. There were stairs that led up to a second floor, so I took them, and it led to a storage place of sorts. Lots of decorations, lights, chairs. Nothing interesting there, but I was about to head downstairs, and I saw a panel in the ceiling that was slightly ajar. Probably nothing, but I couldn't leave it to chance. I moved some chairs underneath, and after pushing it aside, I struggled to pull myself up. The fake arm didn't help much in terms of dexterity, but I was able to use it better than not having anything at all. Finally, I was up, and light filtered in through the stained glass. This seemed to be a storage place as well, but none of this stuff had probably not been seen in a very long time. Dust coated almost everything, including the large wooden Jesus cross in the back. I was struck with flashbacks from the last time Zach and I were in a church with one of those. I shook my head and walked towards it. There were trails going back and forth like something was continuously dragged back and forth. Behind the large desk, the floor was absolutely caked in blood. It was still moist, and a bundle of bloody clothes sat nearby. Looking at the smart-looking dress shirt, I saw the name tag read, Jonathan Carter, Union Church. "Guess the search is off, Johnny," I said to myself. I looked around and saw an old book that was read through quite a bit. Thumbing through the pages, it seemed like a lot of useless information about the town until I found a picture of him. It was just as I remembered him after eating my arm. Gorgeous, radiant, and dangerous. The picture had a bit of a print below it that read, the envoy of the Dark One, vanquished by Agostino Underhill. On the page, written in a large dark font, was an excerpt from something. The blood of the red sun must anoint the blade of the star. I was trying to process what that meant when a voice came from behind.
Matthew Redhill, so good of you to come. I hope you enjoyed lunch. I worked hard on young Jonathan. His father sure did.
I turned, and there was Sister Agatha blocking my exit. I knew you weren't human. It's a shame they didn't get you at the pie contest. Would have saved me the trouble, I said, getting ready to beat her down.
Oh, Matt, you wouldn't hurt a poor old woman, would you? Our Dark Lord wouldn't like that very much.
As the words left her mouth, I could see a long tongue protrude from the fangs that grew around it. Her arms disappeared, and as her head and body grew, the habit she wore ripped off around her. She grew so big, 10, 20 feet long. Her dagger-like eyes were the size of pumpkins, and though she now had the body of a snake, her scaly face remained in some grotesque parody of a person. What the hell are you? Some kind of Medusa?
Naga!
She hissed and launched her body towards me. I dived out of the way and she destroyed the large stand like it wasn't even there. I reached up and grabbed a music stand, and with every ounce of strength I had, I slammed it down into her snake body again and again, creating large gashes that bled out a brown liquid. She hissed in pain, and I saw a large barbed tail shoot down towards me. I held up the stand in front of me, and the tail burst through inches away from my face. Some sort of liquid dipped into my eye that I'm sure couldn't be good for me. Ah! What the hell is in that thing?
Oh, don't worry. Soon this will all seem like a bad dream,
she hissed. She launched her fanged face to my neck, and I shoved the music stand straight into her maw, slicing the sides of her cheeks wide open. I rolled around, barely able to see from whatever was in my eyes, and made a break for the exit. Before I could get there though, her tail wrapped tight around my hips and she pulled me in. Slowly she began squeezing, and I could feel the air being pushed from my lungs. She brought me up level to her face, and even through the pain I caused her, if any at all, she smiled her wicked, sharp-toothed grin.
You will die, Matt Redhill. My master will reign supreme, and when he awakens Talbia, all will end. I think I'll start with your face,
she hissed, and then I remembered my prosthetic arm. I pulled the tab back, aimed at her face and pushed the switch. Like before, the M80 shot out, but as if anticipating this, the Naga moved her head to the side. Apparently she found this hilarious because she began laughing and couldn't stop. It was much like Melvin when he got super toasted and thought about painting goats. She continued to laugh even when the explosive went off, even as the large wooden Jesus cross tilted forward and slammed directly down onto her head. Her body tightened once more, which made me really freaking scared, but then relaxed, letting me go to the floor. I coughed up a storm as my burning lungs began to take in air once more. When I could breathe again, I went over to her bleeding open mouth and filled it with explosives. Explosions rocked the attic as her face became even more ruined. It was nothing personal, but I wasn't taking any chances. The percussions from the quarter dynamite knocked something loose in the floor. it opened up below me, and me, the Naga, and what remained of Johnny fell through, and the massive amount of weight caused the second floor to drop as well. Below us, a crowded room of humans eating people broke our fall. It was actually by the kitchens, so nobody was actually hurt. But I'll tell you what, it scared the hell out of them, seeing a one-armed man, a giant snake, and a massive Jesus coming through the ceiling. Most screamed and ran. Others stared in wonder. The priest was upset and demanded to know what was going on. I filled him in on Agatha's plan, and unfortunately had to inform him that him and all of his flock had eaten his son, Jonathan. He excused himself and left. Not sure where, but at least he had some sort of closure. I, on the other hand, had enough excitement for one day. I made the long walk back up to Grandma's, already feeling sore from the fight. I constantly rubbed my eyes as they still burned with whatever was in its tail. I could still see, so that was a plus, but I would definitely have to flush them out when I got back. The walk gave me time to consider all the facts about the day. I didn't have any parents, my brother was off with my girlfriend somewhere, Uncle Bob's ghost was still missing, and Melvin and Sheena blew me off. Probably for the best though, there's no telling what would have happened if anyone came along. It was a little consolation though, and I felt depressed as hell when I walked up to the property. Then I saw our truck was in the yard. I limped faster to the door and burst through it. The smell of genuine turkey hit me like heaven, and sitting around the table was everybody. Melvin and Sheena were sharing a blunt, talking about the time they saw Bigfoot. Zach was cracking open a beer, and Tarina was placing the large meal they made on the table. At the end was an open seat set up for myself. "Matty!" they all cried. "You're all here! I figured we were cancelling Thanksgiving today." "Never," said Serena, walking over to give me a deep kiss. "Nah man, we got a little tied up back in the mountains, but I came out with something pretty," said Zach. He walked over to the umbrella holder and pulled out the sword. "Damn, that's a beauty for sure. You'll have to tell me more about it. We were all ready to meet up with you back at the trailer, but you never showed up, man," said Melvin. "Totally ditched us. We were starving too," said Sheena. "What do you mean? I walked over, but your van was gone. I thought you ditched me." "No man, like, we sold the van so we could be more independent," he said, followed by another round of laughter. "The wheels blocked the road. We want to experience it the way Mother Earth intended, by our own 2 feet, said Sheena, lifting up a dirty foot for emphasis. "Did you ever find Uncle Bob?" I asked Zach. "Oh shit, I forgot all about him," he said, looking to Serena. He pulled out a glass container with a glowing blue orb inside of it. "I can't get the damn thing open." Try the sword," came another familiar voice. I looked up towards the stairs and saw the mayor in his puppet body slowly descending them. There were no strings, and his body had a strange glow to it. "Oh yeah, the mayor can do that, by the way," said Zach, unsheathing his new prize. With a quick motion, he slid the blade across the top of the bottle and the lid came flying off. "Phenomenal cosmic power!" came a deep, booming voice as the mist began to flow out. It eventually formed our Uncle Bob, who with the quip, "Itty bitty living space!" We all laughed and took our seats. I was surprised to see the mayor staying for supper. I didn't think it was possible for him to eat. As Serena cut the turkey, Dino came running up and jumped his upper body to the table, ripping a leg off and hurrying off with it into the living room. I heard a familiar growl from down below and grabbed the other turkey leg. It might be a deranged monster, but in a strange way, the ghoul in the basement had grown to be our family as well. We all laughed, talked, drank and smoked the rest of the evening. I thought about what a dick I was being earlier and internally berated myself. I had an amazing family that I would never change for all the normal in the world. God bless them, and God bless all of you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.